Awesome. So let's join. Thank you everyone for coming. This community meets to talk about the Central Ave bike lane extension road diet. So just a reminder again, this is a two-fold project. There's a south extension from Fleet to Dock Street and the north extension from Lombard to Monument. In this meeting, we'll talk about the purpose, the background, current conditions of Central Ave, the design concept that we have, and then we'll take a comment, question, answer. So just general high level, the purpose of this traffic calming treatment is to provide, again, traffic calming and multimodal transportation improvements. So we're expecting to see increases in safety, expand upon the existing infrastructure, and increase access to the greater micromobility network. Again, bidirectional projects, you have a existing middle section, and then there's a south extension, north extension, and then that middle existing extension is Lombard Street to Fleet Street. So why do we do projects like this, right? It's a focus on safety and multimodal access. So kind of aiming for a more people-focused design to improve access for users of all ages and abilities, and increase connection for those who walk, run, wheel, scoot, bike, or take an alternate form of micromobility. Just kind of looking at what we've already seen on the existing build of Central Ave and Complete Streets projects citywide, right? These treatments outperform safety metrics throughout the city. So just on Central Ave, we've seen a 48% of reduction in crashes in the project corridor that's built, then 20% reduction in non-motorist crashes. And then you can see here, just in general, a Complete Streets comparison versus citywide metrics, especially in fatal crashes, severe injury crashes, and injury crashes. You have decreases while the city is overall seeing increases. This is also supported by findings throughout the nation and released by the Federal Highway Administration that finds that conversions from a 4-way lane road, which we have here, to a 3-lane with a turn in the center can reduce crashes by 19 to 47%. So just a little bit on the history of Central Ave, right? Central Ave actually used to be a canal that focused on water transit and industrial use, and has adapted throughout history to the needs of Baltimore. So again, it went from water to trucking. Based on development, it was built to a high capacity roadway. And then based on just the volumes we are seeing pretty consistent volumes, especially here on the north end with a pre-construction. So there was no realized increase in that volume. And then we also see just a growing pedestrian and bicycle presence on parts of Central Ave. And then, of course, also citywide and through this quarter, we're seeing an increase in alternate ridership. So, this is a picture of the change that was then installed to meet, current needs. So we have an increase in ridership, especially with our micromobility devices like scooters and e-bikes. And then, this meeting is really to focus on the northern section, but in the southern section, we talked about how hyper connector ridership had doubled in the last 2 years, and that mostly services Maritime Park, where the south businesses are. So just looking at this from a network perspective, so we are building out our network. The Central Ave corridor will connect south into the Promenade and Maritime Park area, and then going further north, we'll connect into Monument Street, which is a few blocks from here, and provide, this will provide a north-south connection. Monument is an east-west connection, and then that can take you, east-west to the city, or you can go east-west to the city and then come north-south this way. And then there's also proposed projects on Washington Street that will then connect up to Hartford Road, which connects up to the county line. So now we'll just look at the existing untreated parts of Central Ave. So in general, there's 4 travel lanes and then a median or turn lane. This can kind of vary throughout the corridor. There are some types of bicycle facilities existing. These are not all ages or abilities facilities, so you have a classic bike lane. And then parking, and then same with North End. You don't have the classic bike lane, but you have a share-o, so kind of a shared space, and then parking. Just in general for this project too, there's signal timing that exists to this corridor. We are looking at making changes. So as part of the project, we are looking to optimize the signals with our changes. So we've collected counts for the south area. We've collected just recently collected counts for this north section of Central Ave, and then looking at level of service and delay and the impact set, and then trying to retime our signals or adjust our signal timing to both produce safer outcomes for everyone using this corridor, and then also just to make sure we minimize any delays that might occur. And then also, there is existing federal highway guidance on road diets like this. We are in those areas, so we meet the criteria for the road diet. But we are, again, getting those fresh counts from this year and then checking that against the guidance. All right, proposed design. So this is what we're going to go forward with building. So what we're going to do is we're basically taking off 2 travel lanes. We'll keep the median / center turn lane. We'll build an all ages facility on the side, and then we also keep parking minus some of the daylighting. So we'll just go through kind of the roll map. So here's our early design concept that we've generated. This is just starting from Dock to Lancaster. So we're taking the 4 lanes on the bridge. There's already 2 existing classic bike lanes. We're upgrading those facilities and then adding a turn lane. And I forget if I mentioned this before, but we can add and adjust these turn lanes, especially where they're painted on, just to help with queuing or prevent delays. So if you're trying to go northbound, but you have a lot of right-hand or left-hand turns, we can adjust those turn lanes. Then going Lancaster to Fleet. So again, just kind of continuing that facility, There is some truck access that we have to respect to these buildings, so we won't have barriers that impede that access. We are working with also our active transportation department to look at scooter corrals. So we have increased micromobility usage, so where can we strategically place our corrals to coalesce those vehicles into a safe space? And then that leads into the existing facility. We're not going to go through the existing facility, but it picks up at Fleet. This is skipping ahead onto closer to Lombard, Baltimore area. So we're at the end of the existing facility and picking up back up again. So again, just keeping that travel, and then you have the center turn lane or median configuration within the bike lanes on the side, and then parking where there is space. That continues up further here. And then we're passing Dunbar right now on this side. So Orleans is in the front here, McElderly. There is some proposed work by others with the development to add a crossing here. And then finally, we tie into Monument Street. So now just looking at our timeline. So we had our first meeting December 11th. We have a second meeting, which is today, and that will conclude the major public outreach on this project. And then, we always are working with stakeholders to tie anything up or address very specific needs. But, this will be the final public meeting. We will aim to finish design by spring this year, and then do installation in either fall 2026 or spring of next year. So I'm going to open up the floor to questions, comments, and answers. Just if you do need anything after this meeting, you can always reach out to dotengagement@baltimorecity.gov, and then just put the subject as Central Ave Extension. You can follow us online at the Streets of Baltimore page. And then finally, if you are a business, there are still some businesses on here. We have the loading zone requests form, which is in this slide, and then we'll post these online. So I guess any go backs, any comments, questions?
Yes. From the outreach meetings and the design process, what are minutes and notes that we have access to from the community standpoint, so we can show how it began, what changes were made, things were looked at in terms of as we move towards this finished design. What's the outcome going to be? Because 26 spring, and then fall 26, you guys will be finished. And we just don't want it to end with something without final look at what it's going to look like.
Yeah, and real quick, do we have a microphone? Or I can just repeat.
Yeah, if you could repeat the question.
Okay, so the question is like how, so right, we did these two community engagement things. People may leave questions or comments, and then how do we know like how does that impact the design or how does that get kind of fed in? So right, in general, a lot of our design is based just off of standard design guidance. And right, teams are really looking for very specific issues or concerns or things that might not be covered by that design guidance. There are things like, so example, in the previous meeting, we talked about the signal timing on Lancaster and just, hey, if we need to one way that street, right, we would go back and have to talk to the stakeholders in that area. And there is a process that we are engaging with that. It's just taking some time. And then what we can do is, right, we maintain the Streets of Baltimore page and post that publicly online to show like, here's what came of that, right? Here's our final design based on our community inputs. And then on top of that, our meetings are recorded and we post those onto the Streets of Baltimore.
Right, so it's like putting your conceptual together. Then you have to make some changes to your original, go through the process with that. And it's just that from what I've gotten from the rest of the communities in between, I've already do South Brooklyn Park Community Association. And it was like it was a negative air. I'm like, no, we got to look at where we're going in the projection for the future.
Yeah.
And because of that, we collaborate together and say, this is a conceptual. This is where we need you to come to the table and tell us how it will work better. Like you say, having commercial inbound traffic, and you have also the schools that are there, with the potential use and how it all ties in together for schools. Because you know, like because I'm up in New South Clifton Park, and we do engage with Clifton Park. So you guys have come through right here from Harper Road, to St. Louis Drive, and it ends right there at St. Clair Lane. And it didn't take on, you were turning on St. Clair Lane and taking Wolf Street. So
Speak up a little bit.
okay, sure.
Here, do we just want to pass it? Can we just?
So we could put it on the table
Yeah.
by Sean.
Yeah. Right, so we can get beyond that point because bikelands are part of the city. There's already, from what I can say, it's a part of that Vision Zero goals. And it needs to be impacted because the community and people need to just say, well, we need to get on board because there's been a series of meetings. It's been a process throughout the whole city. But how are we tying it in? When are we tying it in? When are we going to test it? You know, man, we see the guys ride Maryland Avenue going through and using their lanes. People looking for a large conglomerate of people like a bike race or something going through there. But this is single level individual travel. You know, like it goes to a larger scale, you open it up the lanes, you shut it down the road, you ride it down many lanes. But we need to make that tie in and give the people a buy-in so they can see the value along the lines. Because some of the people were asking about, are we doing anything to encourage bringing in workforce development along with schools that are being brought into scooters and things of that nature, teaching that technology and how it can impact the community. And along those routes, commercial bound. You know, some people are saying if a vehicle is, if a bike is broke down, where is the service? Can we get those young people, those communities involved in putting a service down for a bicycle that's down with a flat tire that can be repaired and put back in so they can see the mission? Because you're growing the people who are desperately in need of physical engagement, get out of the cars and put their feet on the ground and walk or even ride, right? Or make some other terms of transportation.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can say that along the ways because when you tie in all of the pieces, you know, and instead of making it look fragmented all around, you got a piece here, a piece there, and you get a lot of confusion.
And I think that's an excellent point, right? So this project represents the closing of one of those gaps, the bringing together of a number of fragmented pieces, which is why this project, I think, is so exciting and also why it's been prioritized by the city. So some of the points that you made, and I think you made a lot of great points, talking about opportunities to tie not just this bike lane in particular, right, but the network, making sure that the community not only feels a sense of ownership, but also has, has engaged with it directly. And so there's a number of different organizations throughout the city, some that receive some city funding, some that are operate independently, that do things like you have BYKE, which is a great organization that works with young children to teach them not only how to build bikes and take care of bikes and maintain bikes, but also as part of the project, gives those bikes away to the community. And so I would love to connect with you after this, give you my card and see if we can connect a little bit.
And things like we have Safety City in Drew Hill Park.
Oh, yeah.
That concept that you would have to give an explanation that people thinking that they're bike lanes and they ride without helmets.
Right.
They're not obeying the street lights, you know what I mean? And then when they're on side with MTA's traffic, who has direct access through, this is an educational process that we can lay to the community, say, this is where you can fit in with this process and begin education. So it all is a win. Like what was coming up with, we were talking earlier about the emergency routes for the snow being one. I'm on North Avenue with New South Clifton Park, and we want to know what the emergency evacuation route will be now that the single lane. We have to remove where we have those bike lanes. And it's going to be, so do we push out, fill out the bike lanes? Limited parking spaces that are in there, what are we going to do in terms of making that street as passable as possible? And it's just a collaborative that we can toss in there, and that's a part of the process.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, great comment.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I'm tired of hearing people say, I don't want to see this, and I don't want to see that, and I look I don't see it here. That's one thing we will not do.
And one of the things too, right, is that when people do talk sometimes a lot about what they don't want to see.
Right.
We're here because we want to know what people want us to see, right? We're out here seeking that sort of feedback as well. So, we'll certainly take the feedback if we don't want this.
Yes.
But we also love feedback that we want this.
Right. And when this is on the table and it's connected, like we're talking now, it has federal resources, state resources, and local, and it's a collaborative that runs down to the community. So everybody take that. The faith-based communities, the HBCUs, the institutions, all have a role to play in this.
Sure.
Because this is a city, it's a municipality city, and it's built off of the people. And that's it. And that's how we want to lay it out to them and say it's got to be done this way. Whatever it's going to cost us. Yes, we're going to lose on some side. I'm looking at Wood Street. I'm looking at Washington Street, Hopkins area. We talked about putting parking on the back ends of the houses for those homeowners to offset that. We need to start thinking that now because with clear instructions on where we're going, there's no new money. We have to look at the old money that's already out there. This vision has been out there for a while. Yeah. And it's already in motion. We can collaborate that to make it work hand in hand. And I'm willing to stand on behalf of the community and say, let's put across all of this. Let's go. Right. This is a plan that is taking us into the 21st century. I don't know whether we once were thinking that we didn't have the ability to bring. There's a lot of people that talk naysay. How is it?
I want to give some other people an opportunity. I did see this hand over here, and then I think we'll come back.
Two questions.
I'm sorry. Could you state your name, if you're comfortable with it?
Just two questions. One of them was for the page in there, kind of briefly rendered. You said that there was up to, at some points, I maybe I misread that 33% of Central Avenue traffic is non-vehicular. Is that right?
In certain sections, yes. So that is more towards the southern end, right? Traffic can vary based on throughout the quarter, based on local things. So like Orleans Street, they actually have higher traffic because you have the library and school here. So we did, as part of our southern traffic study, note the mode of transit. Sorry, you're not crazy. I'm just gonna tell you.
It's fine.
Yeah.
There it is.
There we are. Yeah. So in our southern traffic study, right, we did note a very large amount, especially of pedestrians right in that area and also coming on and off the promenade. So one thing we found interesting, right, is not just the volume, especially compared to citywide statistics. So right, citywide, the bike and pedestrian combined count is about 6.2, or depending on your leg of the intersection and time, it can be 14 to 33%, on the southern end. So
And is that peak or off?
I think that is both it's peak AM, PM, and noon, just like kind of
It's
spread
common,
out.
so
Yeah.
it's okay, so
Yeah,
how
we're
many is
looking-
the ADT, the average daily traffic?
Yeah.
Second question is just, you guys ran up to 2,000, what's the terminus north?
Yeah.
Mount Monument.
No, it is mine. Yeah.
So, just out of curiosity, I know that it shrinks significantly north of Monument, but you have a great Preston Avenue. Why not just use that, try to find a way to get that far north and bridge it up to Preston? Because from there, we're talking like connections to Charles Street, really like, if you're biking, on that way.
Yes.
So-
You're in Chase.
So I'll start and then I'll let Mr. Bleakney kind of finish.
Mhm.
So the goal of this phase of the project was to close the gap. And so we get a lot of cost savings. It's economically more judicious to focus on one single construction area with each phase. I do think that once we close this gap and we have this continuous network, the next step obviously will be looking for those refining the northern connections. Mr. Bleakney?
Yeah, I think he down here hit it pretty well. It's just what the project was originally scoped to complete. And right where I sit in the agency is that we're executing plans. So right, the plan is finish out Monument Street, but again, we're always, if I may, Sean's department, always evaluates the network and where adjustments are needed or extensions can be added. So, in future years, right, the agency may come back and say, you know what, now is a great time to seize on the opportunity, whether it be part of a separate or an updated plan in the 20X bike plan, or maybe, usually that's kind of how that would start there. And then my agency would then execute that plan. Yeah.
And I'll say too that, with Washington also, which is another north-south connector being constructed as soon as this year, the next step is going to be looking at tying out those connections. Okay. I know we had some questions over here. I'll move the disc.
Hi, my name's Greg Hinchcliffe. I live in Butcher's Hill, about a mile up the hill toward Patterson Park. The site is I'd like here tonight. I use this existing facility often, love it, anxious to see it extended both directions. But it was a mistake I think we made in the initial section, which I would rather not see extended to the new section. At every intersection, there's a little sign that says bicyclists use pedestrian signal. On one hand, there's no need for it. We use those things, for example, on Maryland Avenue, there's no vehicle signal head facing the direction of bicycle traffic. So they got to know when they can proceed. Without spending any extra money, we just slap up a little sign say, "Oh, use the pedestrian signal." What's the harm? The harm is legally, although a driver or a cyclist using the standard motor vehicle head, as long as he makes it across that stop bar before the yellow light turns to red, he's legal. Whereas, as the legality has been explained to me, once a pedestrian signal has started flashing orange, the pedestrian, or in this case, the bicyclist, ordered to use the pedestrian signal, is not allowed to proceed into the intersection. It gets worse. On one section of the existing facility at Eastern Avenue, if you are southbound, the pedestrian signal never comes on unless the cyclist gets off his bike, walks 15 feet over, hits a button, or a big button, and then the thing will come on. So
Which intersection is that where it's actually actuated? The
Eastern and Eastern and Center,
Eastern intersection.
southbound.
Okay, we'll make a note of that.
please. But in the future, I just don't think we need these things. Say $50 per intersection or something, but not putting the signs up. But I think it also, one, may subject cyclists who is watching the big green signal from legal liability. And since this is a contributory negligence state, if he gets hammered by somebody running a red light going across the intersection, but he proceeded when his pedestrian light was flashing 22 seconds to go, he's technically got some degree of fault and will not be able to collect. And the third thing is, it just makes us feel like second-rate citizens. You're not real transportation. You're employees.
So, and I'll start this off, and then Mr. Bleakney can correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of the primary reasons for that is frankly because the amount of signal work to reconstruct all of the signals along the corridor, to remove all of the, because you can't have conflicting movements, right? And so we're going to have, if we're going to have a bike that follows the signal instead of the head signal, we can't have, are there protected rights or any kind of, is it all permissive?
It's all it's all permissive.
It's all permissive.
I don't know that just following the motor vehicle signal heads would cause
Undue conflict.
any conflict other than people making left turns across traffic, which of course we have now, even with the pedestrian side.
Right. Then there's no protected lefts on virtual
Protected
cell phones?
lefts.
Okay.
And, but the protected lefts, of course, also have a red signal for the
Right.
opposing motor vehicle.
No, it's an interesting one, and I think one that we can look at. I don't know if Mr. Bleakney, this is something that you,
I think that would be an expensive fix. The fix in my mind would be just removing all the signs.
my concern is that we wouldn't be able to remove all the sides unless we reconstructed or retied all of the permissive lefts in the corridor. Because if there's a conflicting movement where you have, right now, the pedestrian signal tells you to stop, and they have a permissive left
That's true,
with a
but
green.
I can see that on a permissive right, they might set up some sort of conflict. You might want the cyclists to hold back along with the pedestrians if there's a permissive right signal. For a permissive left, the opposite direction traffic of all sorts, pedestrians and vehicles, have red light, pedestrian stop. We don't do permissive lefts across.
Right.
On the big one, the green. I don't take a look at it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think, like, right, definitely note your comment. Right, when I cycle through the city, like, I experience the same thing, and it is painful.
Well, another point
Yeah.
is that the green light lasts a lot longer than the white. The pedestrian.
Yeah.
Pedestrian proceed signal you might get for 10 seconds out of a 45-second green light.
Yeah, and I think there's some things we need to check there, right? Like, so there is guidance federally from like the MUTCD that we have to check. There's some like checks even before we make those changes with removing the sign, and then right, like ideally, in a very holistic perspective, at some point, maybe when we rebuild signals through the area, we would add
I don't think any signal rebuilding, signal retiming would be necessary. And I can tell you, we've been conducting an experiment for the last time this thing has been open because none of
Yeah.
these things stop. Straight downtown, and they've still got the green light.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that usually I look over and I say permissive, and then, but
Imagine
we would
if
have
the
to
car
look
next to
at
you
it.
has a green light.
Yeah,
I
we'd
think
have,
what we need to do is we'll need to confirm the purpose of those. 'Cause
Yeah.
we don't typically install those things for no reason. I just need to confirm with our engineers whether, like, what the purpose it's serving and what the concerns. But as part of this project, we can certainly,
Graham Patrick, so,
Graham did,
Yeah.
that original.
he did.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's there. As I say, it's usually reserved for two-way bicycle facilities alongside one-way streets.
Right.
There's no. For example, the Monument Street facility across the problem. And ought to have something.
Well, we'll check it. And we
Yeah,
can-
I think
we can
we
put that as an FAQ on the project. So
Okay.
it'll be on the streets.
Okay.
Once we get a good answer.
And even if you can't bring yourselves to modify what you've already got,
Sure.
take a look at it and make sure we're not unnecessarily restricting the site. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, please. Matt over here, Midtown East, Middle East, just north of Hopkins. So I use the Monument cycle track all the time. I echo some of the other comments here about the excitement for this facility. I would use it regularly. It will make my journey down to the water much safer, and I appreciate that. I enjoy all these changes that are happening around the city. I would prefer to see, in all cases where there's a cycle track, there be hard curb stops. So whether that be curb or something that physically separates it. Yeah, and I saw what was here. So
Yeah, I must have. Sorry, keep with your question. I was checking the.
flex posts or a rubber curb stop versus a cement concrete standard curb.
Mr. Blake, we tell them like it's one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, by my mistake, I forgot to put a material slide in here, which we usually have. But yes, we do know like flex posts are not, physical separation. They also have maintenance costs and can be unsightly. So our plan moving forward is new facilities have precast concrete curbs. So these literally look like little Pez pills. So we will, for the new section, be looking at doing a mix between flex posts because we still need some vertical delineation, and then the precast concrete pills for material choices on this project. So,
Very good.
yeah.
And I think correct, this is a consistent facility from Monument all the way down to Harbor East. So that there's no changing, like switching lanes between the parking lane and the cycle track lane. With the bike lane, so that this, the bike lane on both sides of the road will be between the curb and the parking, correct?
Yeah, right now our intent is to do that. We do need to look at our signaling and see like, hey, so right, we may have to add like queue space, which would require kind of like a swap in a way. But the intent is to provide a as protected facility as possible. And then, right, we got to add other things to balance around that.
All right, so let me be on record and say I strongly prefer the facility with the bike lane between the curbs and the parked cars. That
Yeah.
feels to me much safer, even as an experienced cyclist. And when I use facilities that are the opposite, with a bike travel lane between car traffic and parked cars, I have to look out for danger on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And a person getting out of a car is most likely to do it on the left side of the vehicle because there's always a class.
Yeah.
So, for me as a cyclist, there's danger on both sides. With those lanes, there's nothing protecting a car, a driver texting or not paying attention and veering into the cycle lane, which is obviously dangerous. And I've had, unfortunate experiences on roll, on press, on Charles Street. So I use those facilities as little as possible, even as an experienced cyclist.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as you can to keep this facility between the curb and the parked car lane, I think is an immense accomplishment, something I would love to see. Amen.
Yeah, and noted, right, like my approach to the design in this project is to think of it as like unexperienced scooter user and all. So the goal is to try to keep that as much as possible throughout. Keep that consistency through as much of the corridor as possible.
Right.
So,
And since we're talking about consistency and facility, I wanted to follow up one thing that's somewhat related to this. Can you go to the slide that shows the section between here and Monument Street, please?
here in Monument Street,
Yeah,
we
northern.
need to go up one more. There you go.
Yes, that one. So there on Monument Street, on the west side of that intersection, it narrows down to a single travel cycle where it's shared with the sidewalk. And I do a lot of my cycling on Sunday morning. I can't tell you how many interactions I've had from people on scooters and stuff going the wrong direction. It's just mass confusion there. I've had to worry about people getting out of their cars who park there to go to church. And so if anything can be done to fix that bottleneck, that constriction, would be wonderful.
Were you here when they did that?
I was, and I objected to it at the time, but it didn't seem to matter. What I can't understand is if that parking is available for the people at the church, and if it's not handicap parking, why can't that open surface parking lot on the opposite corner of that intersection be used for church parking? That space is used for absolutely nothing. It is a paved over baseball field. Nobody uses that. So if there's any way to incorporate that kind of change, which I think would be fairly minimum in terms of expense and, planning and stuff like that, into the finishing of this project, I think that would be a huge benefit to that general area.
Sure. I think just to clarify, it would be out of the scope of this project. However, the comment is noted, we'll report it, and it's something that we can go back and look into.
Okay. And as I said, I'm very excited about almost all of these changes. They're all very favorable. And yeah, as noted before, the people that object to this kind of stuff, you don't see them in the room.
Mr. Jandy, do we have anybody online with any questions or comments?
Just one person asked if we could repeat the questions, but we got the speaker over there now, so
I
now.
hope it's been clear
Yeah.
and better. Okay.
One question to you, the education, because I'm now receiving more and more education, have experience in the room, that you have wisdom in the room, and they see the whole plan, and we bring it to a booklet so we can teach to the young people, because when you're talking curbside, the bicycle traffic coming down, we have drains. We crossing drains, have that been corrected?
Oh, yeah.
I remember riding as a young kid, riding down the street, is that drain right in place? You riding in the front wheel hit it, you have to know.
Yep.
So we actually legislated that in the Complete Streets ordinance. So Complete Streets, which is something that council passed a number of years ago. Do you remember?
2018.
Was it 18? 2018 requires that those grates not be vertical along the path of travel in the bike lanes. So they've been, I think they took a couple of years, but I think they've gotten them all now. So everything that's within a bike lane.
As they rebuild streets, as they
Within
build
a-
bike project.
Right, within a bike lane or existing bike lanes, they have been corrected so they're not catching vehicles.
So I see that lane, right now,
Yes,
25th Street going down, and, I was just told by, people parking. There's an issue that you park over the line, you get ticket,
Sure.
you know what I mean? And that education is not come out to the community to make them aware what we're doing. Our sizes are getting smaller. The space sizes, people never walk the distance of the car, not being told to curl out parking for us, they don't know. And that's what we have, is we have an unruly, unbalanced city with a lot of changes coming. Can we just bring it back to, like you said over here, the desk, that you have to bring a copy of the survey analog, as well as doing it digital. And let's hold that in the format so we can return back with the education shown by the pitfall. And how much time it took for people not to show up at meetings, to have confusion on the other side and meet on the other side. Same vision.
Sure. And I think that, talking not just specifically about this project, but about the agency in general, right? The Department of Transportation has been working very hard over the last couple of years to diversify the ways that we reach out to communities. And I know that you've experienced some of this personally on Washington with the Washington Project. Gone are the days where we have one stuffy meeting at like a somewhat centralized location, and then that's here, right? We are really trying to rework the way that we engage with communities to include going to communities, going to community events, tabling, doing pop-ups, things of that nature where we're lowering the friction that exists between the community and the people who have been tasked with completing these sorts of projects. So we're going to keep working on it. I think we can get better and better every day until it's perfect.
So what we've done in New South Cookie Club, we don't have any more in-person meetings because there are so many things as volunteers that we're able to handle in a 2-hour meeting. And there's certain people who just have this mindset that you got to bring it all to the table. Free is for idiots, and we can't deal with it. We want the community associations that reach outside of the box and don't just think that it's going to come from the city or the state or the fed.
For sure.
We have to put our own. That's why we're here. Start saying that this was it. I'm a man, a friend, Harbor Point, and my friends at East Harbor, and my friends over in the classrooms on Point side, and my young returning people that's coming back into the city. And it's getting ready to be springtime, summertime. How are we going to make this thing work? So we need some visibility out there. Stop talking about what is needed. The way our city is, and some actions. Because I know when I do my volunteers for the Baltimore Marathon, it's a nightmare. And it's a nightmare because there's lacking education. It's going to happen because we're taking that tour from South African Bluff, and we volunteered with that organization for sports, and we've now served 150,000 people. Wow! So we can take the word out, and we can lead that back in. We're using our Zoom portal to have a monthly meeting. We're expanding on our bylaws. So we encourage other community associations to join us in the meeting. So we'll be inviting you to the table. You can do this presentation completely virtually, be in your office. We use the technology we have to get the final results.
Great.
And let's move forward.
Okey doke. Okay, any other questions? Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
Just briefly,
Right. Sorry.
between Orleans and Market, how many crossings are we going to plan? Just one or how many?
Orleans and one.
It's just the one.
Yeah.
We're talking multiple, structures there.
We're talking about crosswalks.
Yeah, crosswalk.
Oh, okay. So one new crosswalk is planned with, that would be through the developer. So like we
Okay.
do it, he wouldn't do that. And it would be a ped crossing. And then I think, right, McElderly or exists Jefferson Street. I think if you go out right now, it's still in work. So that's just like a curb cut. And then you already have some of the buildings up here that exist. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask too, is the timeline of the project as a whole in jeopardy of any of the craziness that's going on at the federal level?
this is not federally funded,
I don't believe this is federally funded. So
so nothing.
Very good. That's it.
No federal funding in this.
This is old money.
This is old money?
No new money.
oh, new money.
I talked with the governor,
Yeah.
and he says there's not going to be too many cuts on some things that are already in place that government to moving forward. But the new,
Is this HSIP or bikeways?
I thought Central had its own separate.
Oh, it's all
Yeah.
It's the Washington cycle track federally funded,
HSIP.
which is,
It's highway sharing. So it's from us.
okay,
Yep.
through bikeways.
Yep.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
the purpose of the time ready.
Okay.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. everybody.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you for coming down.
And Drew online says, thanks for the information. Super excited.
Drew, you're welcome. Have a great night.
Take care. Thank you.
Yeah. Our dog.